Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, December the 10th, 2024. Today I want to look a little at Syria, look at a few charts about what is going on, the charts of some of the main actors, in particular, the countries, Israel, Iran, Palestine, and some other charts, maybe the chart of Bashar Assad. When you look at something like Syria, you try your best to predict what's going to happen. I wasn't really looking at Syria over the last month. It wasn't a focus. I perhaps should have been paying more attention to Bashar Assad's chart because he's just had his Saturn return. In fact, he's in the middle of his second Saturn return. But one does wonder, what the point of astrology is sometimes, whether it's really necessary. I mean, in terms of Syria, you kind of know what's going to happen. You don't need to be an astrologer to know how it's going to work out. You know it's going to work out badly. It always does. So it's kind of interesting that you've got a lot of people in the West being very excited about the fall of Damascus and how it's a new dawn for Syria and it's going to be democracy and freedom and all of that kind of stuff. And you just know it's not going to happen. That seems to be a sort of rule of thumb in the Middle East, that if you have a vicious dictatorial government and it's overthrown, the government that takes its place is always worse. I mean, that's just how it works in the Middle East. So I'm not convinced that I'm going to be able to come up with anything useful. Of course, there are a couple of big questions. I mean, the big question that I'm asking myself is when is Iran going to get the atomic bomb? Because Iran has lost face, and surely Iran is now going to do everything it can to get the atomic bomb. I mean, if only as a matter of pride. I tried to look at that question in terms of a horary chart, but unfortunately the chart wasn't radical, and so perhaps it might be a good idea to explain what I mean by a horary chart not being radical, just to illustrate a point. But anyway, before I look at the Middle East, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Tuesday, December the 10th. As always, if you like this video, I'd be very grateful if you were indeed to like it by pressing the like button, wherever that might be. And if you're not subscribed and you like the video, I would be really happy if you were to become a subscriber. So let's look at what's going on. There, top right, is Bashar Assad, who I believe has now fled to Moscow, and here is the positions of the planets today, and you will see that noon, December the 10th in New York, the moon is in Aries. So we can see that the moon is making a trine to the sun. So, moon in Aries, very much in the middle of Aries there, and it's quite an assertive place for the moon to be in, especially when it's trine the sun. And in fact, it's quite a good trine to the sun, isn't it? I mean, it's very fiery, two fire signs. When you've got moon trine sun, it's often quite wholesome and harmonious, and things run quite smoothly. So I think that is perhaps something to be welcomed, having the moon trine the sun. Additionally, we have got the moon starting to make a conjunction with Chiron. And in fact, the sun is trine Chiron. So we've got sun Chiron trine. So, with sun Chiron trine, you might see this as an opportunity to be different. It's not a time to just follow the crowd. If you want to do something unusual that might grab people's attention, then now might be your chance to do it. And also, I suppose you have to see Chiron as being the healer. So it might be a time of healing, where some of us might feel that we have a chance to perhaps make the world a better place. And if someone's in trouble or has got a problem with Sun trine Chiron, it might be relatively easy to sort the matter out. And also got just before the Sun trines Chiron, right at the beginning of the day, we've sort of got Moon trine Mercury. So the moon is kind of quite useful there. So I think that, overall it is a day when I think that things are flowing, but there's not a lot happening really today. I mean, there's no major astrological aspect at the moment. We know that things are brewing. Venus is starting to move to an opposition of Mars, but that, Venus in Aquarius, now at 3-4 Aquarius, sort of just over 2 degrees away from that opposition of Mars. So in a couple of days' time, it'll be exact. I suppose many of us may be starting to feel that. I mean, I know that I've said that today, in many respects, is going to be quite harmonious. The energies are going to flow, but at the same time, with Venus opposition Mars, it may just be an awareness that we don't entirely get on with everyone. There could be some personality clashes with Venus opposition Mars. And I suppose you could say that some people are making a special effort to be charismatic and attractive with Venus opposition Mars, but they're not always being successful. So attempts to attract might not always work. So that is building up, and clearly that's something that I need to discuss at a later stage. Also, a reminder that Jupiter is going retrograde, and Jupiter is retrograding towards a semi-square aspect with Pluto. That's another aspect I'll be talking about a bit later on in the week, but in general, Jupiter semi-square Pluto is about the struggle for self-improvement. We have to think, however well we're doing, however good things are, things could always be better. And so there might be a little bit of obsessiveness in that direction. So that's the position in New York, set for noon. You can see the moon is at 16 Aries. If we set that chart for Sydney at noon as a representative of Australasia, so we have the moon is earlier in Aries, and you can see that the moon is trine Mars. So if you are in Australasia, probably the main aspect today is going to be moon trine Mars. And that moon trine Mars, if you're in the Americas, in Europe, that's going to be kind of yesterday, not really today. But with moon trine Mars, if you are in Australasia, that's quite energetic, and things happen quickly. People can get aggressive quite quickly, but if you want to assert yourself with moon trine Mars, and also the moon doesn't just trine Mars, it trines Mercury. So if you are in Australasia, you can benefit from a grand trine in fire signs. I mean, I think you're going to get a certain sense of this grand trine if you're in other parts of the world, but I think in Australasia you're going to really feel it. So it may be a time to really make things happen with your actions and your words. Turning to the heliocentric picture, so that means putting the sun at the center of the solar system, and so there we have the heliocentric chart there. The Earth conjunct Jupiter is now breaking up. In other words, the Sun opposition Jupiter is breaking up. I suppose in retrospect now, I was sort of making the links between now and Pearl Harbor. As far as I know, no American naval base has been attacked. Even the Russian naval base in Syria. I mean, Russia still has a naval base in Syria, and it's not, as far as I know, it's not leaving. It's not leaving in disgrace. It's disgrace. It's still got military bases. That hasn't been attacked. I think that Russia is planning on keeping its bases, and so far nothing dramatic has been happening to my knowledge. But it does seem that Earth conjunct Jupiter, in retrospect, was really about the fall of Damascus. I mean, I think that would have been difficult to say at the time. Okay, one perhaps should have been aware of it as soon as this incursion of Syria happened on November the 27th. I mean, it inevitably would lead to the fall of Damascus. Apparently, well, I don't know at what stage it became inevitable, but Earth conjunct Jupiter was a sort of a final release, things actually happening, and this is that's the action, and that's done. And also we've got Venus sextile Jupiter. Venus sextile Jupiter, I would have said, is a fortunate influence. Venus sextile Jupiter, heliocentrically, it's the two benefics in sextile, and it does mean that there's a certain sense of good fortune there, especially in terms of relating to other people. Relationships sort of run relatively smoothly, I would have said, and in certain cases, through another person, we can get some good luck. And so that's, I think, all I want to say about the heliocentric picture, except to say that heliocentrically, the Jupiter sesquiquadrate Pluto is now exact. You can see Jupiter at 1630 Gemini, Pluto at 132 Aquarius. You can always spot a sesquiquadrate by adding 15. And okay, you've got to consider whether you're dealing with fixed, cardinal, or mutable signs. But part of the process of spotting sesquiquadrates is to add 15. So Pluto, you add 15 to 1 degree 32, so that's 1632. So 1 degree 32 fixed will make a semi-square or a sesquiquadrate to 1632 mutable, and so there's Jupiter. So exact Jupiter sesquiquadrate Pluto aspect there, and that's perhaps going to sort of encourage us to be energetic, to make more of what we've got, and to perhaps push things as far as we can go. Jupiter is about expansion. Pluto can also be about obsession. So expansion, obsession. We're not satisfied with what we've got. We always want more, and that can be a fortunate influence. It can be a not so fortunate influence. I think we should be working on ourselves. I think that's the best way to use this energy. So now it's time to look at things from a perspective of the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Tuesday, September the 10th, 2024. Aries. Aries, it looks to me like things are happening. Things are moving. You've got the moon in Aries. You've got the moon in Aries trine the sun in Sagittarius. In fire signs, you've already got the sun in Sagittarius. The sun in Sagittarius is good news for Arians in general. So whatever you put your mind to, I think there's a good chance that it will move, and it may be that you just don't actually need as much energy as you thought you needed. So there's no need to overdo it. So if you're feeling a little bit frustrated, as if you're feeling that you want things to happen and you want to give it everything you've got, well, you don't necessarily need to give it everything you've got. Just a little push might be enough, Aries. So do tune into your own power and accept your own power, and don't think that you have to try too hard. If you do try too hard, that's going to be it's going to be overkill. It's also perhaps going to alienate you. I mean, no one wants an obnoxious Aries flying around the place. It's just not necessary. So do consider, Aries, what you need to do to get what you want, and don't give it more energy than you have to. And with the moon trine sun, if you make the effort, well, in fact, making the effort actually means not making any effort at all. Ideally, things should be effortless. So, ironic as it might sound, do make the effort to make everything effortless. In fact, you don't need to you don't need to make an effort. It's all straightforward, and you can actually be spontaneous. And I think that Aries as a sign is on its best form when it is spontaneous, and people are just going to enjoy your presence, and at the same time there will be something about you that's quite motivating. Aries is a sign that people like to have an Aries around. Aries just brightens things up. It makes things more exciting, and people will gravitate towards you naturally. You don't have to force it. So if you feel you want to say something, just say it. Don't try too hard. It will just naturally come together. So to my mind, that does look really good. And also, Aries, consider the possibility that you can make things better for people. The moon is making a conjunction to Chiron. The sun is making a trine to Chiron. So Chiron could be seen as a healing energy. So through your enthusiasm and your zest for life, you can make things better for other people, and you can perhaps allow people to see a different view, a more positive, optimistic view. Maybe, if you're dealing with someone who's feeling negative, they think it's all doom and gloom. Yeah, you can show them a different vision, and I think you can make all the difference. But with Sun trine Chiron, it's not a time to just do things the same old way. I think to an extent you are going to want to be different. Now, don't try too hard to be different. I mean, if you try too hard to be different, it just doesn't work. And I mean, it's like with people who say that they're eccentric. If I say I'm eccentric, you can't say you're eccentric. You can be told you're eccentric, but if anyone claims they're eccentric, in my opinion, they're not eccentric at all. It's not something you can spot in yourself. And likewise with this moon and the sun, moon conjunct Chiron, sun trine Chiron, you don't want to draw attention to your own differences, because if you draw attention to your own differences in a contrived way, then you're not being different at all. You're just another attention seeker, and you're just like everyone else. You just have to do what's natural, what feels right, and in that way, you will stand out. So you don't have to worry about standing out, because you're going to stand out without having to try. One final point about relationships. I just have to re-emphasize, what I said yesterday. Venus is opposition Mars. With Venus opposition Mars, not everyone is going to appreciate you. It's just not possible. Okay, that does depend to an extent on how many people you meet over the course of the day. Okay, if you meet one person, then they might appreciate you. But if you meet 20 people, then a certain proportion of these people, you're just not going to get on with them. There's something about your style and approach that is going to grate. That's the way it is. And also with Venus opposition Mars, it does say something about one-to-one relationships. And I think subtlety on your part could be very important. If you're too over the top, it's going to cause friction, and perhaps some of your sort of more problematic personality traits should perhaps be kept to yourself a little with Venus opposition Mars. But that shouldn't take away from the fact that it is a high energy day when I think that you can be successful, and I think you can also be happy. Taurus. Taurus, in many respects, you are not really ready to deal with the world. It just feels as if there's just too much happening. And there is a lot happening today, particularly with this moon trine Mars. Moon trine the sun. It is high energy. Okay, then in fact there's moon. You've got moon trine Mars, really, if you're in Australia and New Zealand. So there is a lot happening today. But Taurus, I'm not convinced that you're necessarily going to want to take part in it. You may feel that you have a limited amount of energy, and if you were here, there, and everywhere, you would end up by exhausting yourself. So perhaps, Taurus, you should be considering what you can do on your own, because I think you're in a position where you can actually do quite a lot on your own. You don't need anyone's help. And the moon trine sun can be annoying because it's high energy, but the moon trine sun can also work in your favor provided you handle it correctly. The moon trine sun is about you working behind the scenes, and when you're working behind the scenes, when you're not getting anyone's attention, things just move very easily. You can move from place to place, and perhaps you'll work best in the shadows, in the darkness, where you're not seen. But regardless of the time of day, you may just feel that you're not being noticed. Just for today, maybe tomorrow as well to some extent. But the spotlight is not on you, and I know that sometimes that can be an affront if a spotlight is on you. I mean, we all like attention to some extent, but attention is not your friend at the moment. When you're getting a lot of attention, Taurus, you're not very powerful, because attention means that you're having to do things other people's way. You're having to follow other people's rules. But by doing things on your own, you can make things happen your way, and also you can keep hold of your vision. And you do have a kind of a vision. You do have an idea in your mind about the way things should be working out, and it's almost a plan, and you don't want anyone to disturb your plan or even to question your plan. So if you're not being bothered, then really what can stop you? And so do take it slowly, and if in doubt, don't say it. There's nothing that has to be said, I don't think. And if you can just avoid attention, I think that would be really good. And at the same time, Taurus, it's an opportunity to ask questions. There are some quite fundamental things, Taurus, that you don't fully understand, but you feel that you need to understand them. And if there's something that seems to you to be a mystery, then what you need to do is unpack the mystery. Because Taurians, it's an earth sign. You don't want things to be up in the air. You want things to be tangible, and you want things to make sense. And so if something doesn't make sense, then you can take action to shed light on it. But it's the kind of action, again, that no one needs to know about, no one else needs to know about. So quietly, Taurus, you can work out how things are working. And if you feel that something has been held back from you, maybe you feel someone is being too secretive, you may be able to find out the solution or find out what the secret is through your own independent channels, or perhaps through your own independent research. So today, it may be a day of knowledge, a day when you can discover things. But again, it has to be done in your own way. It's certainly not a day for asking questions, at least not direct questions. Okay, there may be ways to ask questions in a sort of impersonal way. I don't know if you've got access to artificial intelligence, but you don't need to identify yourself, and if possible, don't identify yourself. Does anyone know? Does anyone need to know who you are? Maybe not today. And if you can cultivate a low profile, and you can be mysterious and at the same time be the one who untangles mysteries, because you're not into guessing games, and you want to know the answers. And the answers are available if you adopt the right methodology. Gemini. Gemini, we have the moon moving through Aries, and Aries is a sociable sign, and it's a time when you can really be yourself and also get attention. And I don't think you mind getting attention. And you benefit from a sextile between the moon and Jupiter. So we have moon in Aries making a sextile to Jupiter in Gemini. So that does give you a real boost, and it means that when you're with other people, you stand out. You stand out without having to try. So there's no need to feel ignored. And I think that people will appreciate your vision and your insights. And I think that it's should ideally be quite balanced. You know, if you've got things to say, other people have got things to say. There can be back and forth. You don't want to dominate anyone. You don't want to dominate any social situation, and you don't have to. It's just a time when you can just be yourself, and you know, that really is enough. And also, you may be feeling slightly less trapped. I think that, you know, because Mercury, your ruler, has been in a rather difficult situation recently. I mean, it's still retrograde, and it is retrograde for another week, and it is in detriment because it's in Sagittarius, and it has been very close to the Sun. But the Sun is now moving away from Mercury, and it's Mercury is no longer combust. In other words, combustion is when the Sun and Mercury are 8 degrees apart. They're no longer 8 degrees apart. So it may feel, Gemini, that something that has been holding you back, something that's been preventing you from seeing the full picture, is going away, and you can start to see things for the first time. And perhaps you'll realize that recently you've made a few mistakes. You have perhaps underestimated some things, overestimated other things, but now it's becoming clearer. And you know, because it's becoming clearer, you're feeling happier, and you feel that you have a lot more freedom. And because you're relaxed, I think that people are going to like having you around. But you can't be everywhere. I mean, there might be a temptation for some Geminis to sort of overload their social lives, to be in touch with lots of different people, but you could take things too far. I mean, I know that Gemini can be a sociable sign, but there's some danger that you socialize with people who aren't any good for you, or maybe they could have motives which may not actually be in your own interests. So, I mean, I think this is possibly unlikely, but there's just some chance that you get involved with people who may be up to no good. That is possible. They might seem friendly on the surface, but what are they revealing? And so, if new people come into your life today, ask yourself, what is their motive? Always ask what someone's motive is. Okay, some people you know very well, and you don't have to ask that question, but motives should always be questioned. And today in particular, it's very important to question someone's motive. Sometimes, Gemini, you can get involved with someone who their motives are not particularly good, but there's a certain sense of curiosity there. But I don't think that curiosity is necessarily something to be welcomed. I think I mentioned this a day or two ago. Curiosity can be a problem for Geminis, and so be careful there, and don't be too curious about other people. And if you feel that someone is up to no good, then just leave it at that. You don't have to have anything more to do with them. I mean, I suppose we do live in a dog-eat-dog world, and everyone has got their motivations, and I suppose everyone's looking after their own interests, but some people can take selfishness to a new level, to a level that sort of verges almost on the criminal. So that is possible. So just because you're feeling sociable, Gemini, it doesn't mean that you have to be totally sociable. Stick to people who you know and trust, and then I think that you should be fine. And pre-existing social engagements, again, that should work extremely well, and you've got something to say, and at the same time you can be a good listener if you try. You have to try hard to be a good listener, but I think it's probably worth the effort. Cancer, the moon is in Aries all day, and so with the moon in Aries all day, that possibly gives you a certain obligation. It gives you the obligation to be noticed. Yeah, you have the obligation to be noticed. You might think being noticed is something quite passive. You're just sitting there. People either notice you or they don't notice you. But I think it's important you are noticed, because you've got something to offer, and you can present yourself in a very sort of free-flowing but sort of charismatic way, and I think that people are going to listen to you, and people are going to trust you, and you're helped by the fact that the moon is trine the sun, and so with the moon trine the sun, you're someone who is able to get things done. And if anyone's unsure of themselves, they don't know how to do things, you're the person to meet, you're the person to talk to, because you have got solutions. So that suggests, Cancer, that it might be a time when you can show a certain amount of initiative, and your initiatives are likely to be followed. People will take the view that you're someone who can be trusted, and it could be a question of you being able to lead by example. People are prepared to follow your example, because it's quite clear that you are competent. And I know you might not necessarily feel competent. I mean, I suppose many Cancerians have their own doubts, but it's not a time for having self-doubt. You've clearly understood what is going on, and you are having an influence, and you shouldn't be afraid of doing things differently. The old ways of doing things have had their day, and perhaps at the same time some people are just a little bit complacent. They just assume things will carry on as normal. You know that things are not going to carry on as normal, and with the moon making a conjunction to Chiron, you may feel a certain obligation to do things in a way that other people are not expecting. You can't have a situation where you follow the script, where you do what's expected of you. That's not a good idea, and it's particularly not a good idea today. There may even be a sense in which things have to be slightly shaken up, because the world is changing, and it's changing. I mean, Cancer of all people, you are sensitive, and you understand the way it's working. So don't be afraid of making changes without much warning, and ask yourself also if you're being taken for granted. How do you get to be taken for granted? I think one way in which you can be taken for granted is if you behave in the same way. So if you always respond in the same way, people get used to your behavior. And as people get used to your behavior, they start to have expectations. And when there are expectations, you start to fit into those expectations. So it becomes an ever-tightening circle where you start to lose your freedom, and you become a script, and you're expected to behave according to this script. But today you have an opportunity to break the pattern, because if you don't break the pattern, then expectations get entrenched. So breaking a pattern, Cancer, might be something that you really should consider doing, and I think that it will work in your favor. And you don't have to do it by being consciously disruptive, by being a rebel. That's not what you have to do, or a revolutionary. You just have to decide, today's a new day, I'm going to do things this way as opposed to that way, and that's the way it is. Just a simple change like that. You don't have to tell people what you're going to do. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to make a big drama about it. You just do things differently. And people might be confused. They might at first be upset, but they'll get used to it. Don't worry. And in the process, you will be asserting yourself, but without causing a negative reaction. Leo, I would have thought that overall things are actually looking pretty good, not least because there is a trine aspect between the moon and the sun. So we've got moon in middle of Aries applying to the sun. The sun is at 19 Sagittarius, noon New York, and so that trine between the sun and the moon, of course, has an impact on your sign, because you're a Leo, and so you can feel the sun moon trine, and in a really very positive way. You just feel that you are part of the flow, and I would have thought, Leo, in most cases things should run smoothly, and I think that you get today a great sense of who you are and what your fundamental identity is. And certainly there's no need to be someone else or to do things other people's way. You can be free, and you can be an individual, and I think that at the same time you can be very much appreciated. And also you're going to be fairly charismatic over the course of the day. Now, where does that charisma come from? It may have something to do with the Venus-Mars opposition. So there is a Venus-Mars opposition coming up over the next couple of days, and it's getting stronger and stronger, but it's just, you've hit things at a particular stage of this opposition. So what we've got the sun is quite close to a semi-square of Venus, and right now the sun is also aspecting the Venus-Mars midpoint. It's making actually a semi-square or a sesquiquadrate to the Venus-Mars midpoint. So, that says something about who you are and how you're expressing yourself with that midpoint. And so with Sun aspecting a Venus-Mars midpoint at Leo, that does make you someone who gets noticed. People think you're attractive. They find you attractive. There's something about you that they want to know more of. And so do take advantage of that. And okay, you can't be attractive to everyone. That is the nature of Venus-Mars, always the nature. But a good chunk of the population are going to find you attractive, if you make yourself known and noticed. And so that gives you an opportunity to perhaps pursue your agenda. If there's something you want people to hear, if you want to get noticed for any particular reason, now is your chance. So it's not a time, Leo, for holding back. So if there's something you want to say, something you want to advocate for, then I think that now might be a very good time to do it. And and that also goes back to the fact that you've got Moon trine the Sun. You could regard the Moon as being the people out there, and the Sun is you. So Moon trine Sun, it's a time when you are popular. And okay, popularity kind of depends who you are, doesn't it? I suppose if you're a politician or a dictator, popularity means something different than if you're just an ordinary person. So it kind of depends on what the scope is for you being popular. But all things being equal, your popularity ratings are at the top of the scale. 10 out of 10, 5 stars. So that's looking good. And so it would be a shame if you weren't able to use that popularity. And at the same time, Leo, don't be complacent. Don't feel that you've got all the answers. And there are more things to discover. Okay, you might have what you need to do an okay job, to feel broadly satisfied, but you could always go further. And if you make the effort to go further, I don't think you'll be disappointed. So going further perhaps means embarking on some kind of a discovery, or putting yourself in a situation where you can get access to new information. And there may be a spiritual side to it. You might start to be able to put whatever your actions are into a sort of a broader context. And I think, Leo, what would be really good today is if you were to actually get a sense of meaning. And, meaning it's a nice thing to have, meaning, to believe that everything is for a purpose. And sometimes we feel a lack of meaning. But today, you can feel meaning, just a feeling that you're doing something that is good, that you're on the right path. And so perhaps you need to sort of review your various activities and ask yourself what is important to you. And if something is important, it does have meaning to you, then, Leo, I think it's important that you pursue it with everything you've got. Virgo, it seems that there may be some questions to ask, quite important questions. And it may feel, Virgo, that recently, you wanted to know things, but you just haven't been given the answers you were looking for. Maybe people were holding something back. Maybe they were deliberately hiding things. And that didn't feel right. It didn't feel satisfactory. And you perhaps now want to address the issue. And so, Virgo, it's a time to make sure that you're really able to get to the bottom of things. And if if something is hidden, then I think that you have a chance to really discover its underlying essence. And I think it's also important not to take no for an answer. And that's especially the case when you are asking questions or when you hit a brick wall. There's information out there, I think, that people don't want you to get hold of. And I'm not necessarily talking about individuals. I may be talking about companies, bureaucracies, organizations. Something's being hidden, I think. And you have the tools with which to reveal it. Now, I'm not trying to make you paranoid. All of us are in this situation where things are being hidden from us. And if you don't believe that, think about what you are hiding. So think about all the things that you're hiding from other people. And then that will remind you that other people are similar to you. Everyone's hiding something. And it's the way it is. And so, it's not a bad situation that there are secrets, that something is being hidden, but you needn't tolerate the situation. Why should you? I mean, if you discover things, then that's going to work in your best interest. I think that's fairly obvious. Though it is possible to go too far. You want to find out as much as you need to know, but if you ask one question too many, you may actually get information that you didn't really want to know about. And I mean, it can also be the same on the internet. If there's something bothering you and you really go into the internet and you look at forums and you ask lots of questions and you keep going, and then suddenly you find out something you really didn't want to know. So in terms of your search for knowledge, you need to know when to stop, because there's always something we don't want to know. Not just don't want to know, there's something we don't need to know. And if we do know it, it doesn't make life any easier. We can't unknow it once it's known. We can't put it back in the box. And sometimes too much knowledge can be distressing and not helpful. As far as a few specifics, I think some of it may be connected with money. And it is a time for finding out things about money and getting involved in things which are complicated of a financial nature. That's true. And also, I suppose if you're messing around with money and money in terms of, complicated money, difficult money, money where other people are involved, you can come across people's fundamental unpleasantness. And this might be something that you have to find out about, that if someone is doing something financially without good motives, when they're really thinking about themselves, or there's some other nefarious purpose behind it, then you need to know. And so what I'm really saying is, Virgo, that the truth needs to be finely balanced. There are things you need to know, and some things you need to know are uncomfortable, but you still need to know them. Some things, if you go too far, are uncomfortable, but you didn't actually need to know them at all. They're just making you uncomfortable just for the sake of it. And that is a difficult balance to get, but I think if you make the effort and you listen to your feelings, I think in terms of what you're trying to discover, then I think at some level you will know when to stop. And I know I've been a little bit, I won't say negative, but I've made things rather complicated for today. But it shouldn't take away from the fact that the moon is trine the sun. And the moon trine the sun it's a fortunate aspect. It's an aspect that gives security, and it's an aspect that gives you security, because the sun is in the sun's in Sagittarius. In the Virgo chart. Sagittarius is a very sort of grounding sign. Sagittarius is a grounding sign. The sun is in Sagittarius, and the moon is in Aries, making a trine to the sun. So perhaps what this is saying is, in terms of understanding things, getting to the bottom of things, what you're looking for is comfort. When you're no longer sort of worried about how things are working out, you've no longer got concerns because the knowledge is giving you security. So when your questions have reached the stage when you're getting the answers that make you feel secure and comfortable, maybe that's the time when you can stop asking and just be happy in the knowledge that you know enough. Libra, there is, I suppose, a continued emphasis on the outside world, on the other. The other is in contrast to you. There's always you and there is the other. And the other is not necessarily about another person. It's just about everything that is not you. That everything that is outside your control. And so, with the moon in Aries, you have to be very much aware of the other, of the things that are out there and how they're influencing you and how you manage them. And management, I think, is quite important. And if you pretend that you're in control, then I suppose you're asking for trouble, because at a certain stage, probably sooner rather than later, you're going to hit a block. You'll realize you can't go any further without getting someone's support or someone's permission. But at the same time, you don't want to be in a situation where you feel you have no control. You have to see control and agency as something that, to an extent, has to be negotiated. And I think today things can be negotiated because there is a trine between the moon and the sun. The moon is in Aries, it's trine the sun, and from your perspective, Libra, that trine between the moon and the sun allows you to tell everyone what's on your mind, and also it allows you to articulate your needs. Because if people don't know what you want, then can you really expect them to act in your own interests? You have to tell people what's on your mind and what's important to you, and I think people will understand. So it's very important, Libra, not to assume a conflict, and also to recognize that right now your verbal skills are very good, and you're going to find it relatively easy to talk to a wider audience. It's an audience that will understand your message, and I think the reason your message is going to be understood and appreciated is because, in a way, you're telling people what they want to hear. I mean, you cannot persuade people to change their mind if you are presenting them with a view that they are completely opposed to. You have to start with common ground, and I think that's how you can do it. You start by looking at the ways in which you and other people agree with each other, and that can be the basis for your attempts to present your ideas, because you do have some important ideas, and I think that people will be prepared to listen, provided you do things in the right way, and you perhaps need a little bit of patience. And that means that there is a certain amount of give and take, because as I said, the moon is in Aries. If you completely ignore other people, then you're not going to get very far. But by interacting with them and perhaps telling them what they want to hear, then I think that things should in the end work quite well for you. Yet we can't ignore the fact that Venus is getting closer and closer to an opposition of Mars. And this is something I will be talking about over the next couple of days. But Venus is your ruler; it's opposition Mars, and that just might be someone who just upsets your equilibrium. Not everyone is to your taste. You, as being a Libra, you do have a sense of harmony. Harmony is important to you, and some people just upset your harmony. And why do they upset your harmony? I mean, it may be just something about their vibes, their aura, what they look like, just something like that, and it just upsets you, and you're not really in the mood for tolerating crude and gross behavior. I mean, Librans can be crude, but Librans don't like crudeness. Not really. It's Libra is a very human sign, and certainly earthy crudeness is not really something you like. And crude people who have a particular sense of humour that may be just a little too earthy for your liking, that's not the kind of thing you're going to want, particularly now with Venus moving towards an opposition of Mars. So if someone upsets your equilibrium, then don't be too polite about it. Just focus on someone else or something else. And finally, I should say a little bit about career, if it's relevant. So from a career and business perspective, again, if that's important to you, if that matters, then it may be a time when you are more dependent than usual, and you are reliant on other people making decisions, perhaps, or you're waiting for someone to make up their mind about something, and it just may feel that you don't have as much control as you'd like to have. But I wouldn't worry about it. It's part of the ebb and flow of life, and if you have to be at someone's beck and call, then I would have said just put up with it. And of course that particularly applies if you're in a job where there's someone above you telling you what to do. Just accept the situation. Or I suppose if you have your own business, it may be that you feel that you're at the mercy of clients, or that might be the feeling, and you're tempted to assert yourself, perhaps to say something, but I think that in most cases you should sort of accept the situation, at least in the short term. I mean, sooner or later things will resolve, but I don't even necessarily think it's a bad thing. Sometimes you do have to listen, and you do have to understand what people want, and that is perhaps a good investment for the future, understanding what people want. Because if you understand what people want, then you're getting a good insight into their personality, and that's always important if you have to keep on dealing with them, over the short term, or perhaps even the longer term. So there's no need to be too assertive, and just accept, with the moon in Aries, that today you're not in full control. Scorpio, you at the moment are in the mood to make things happen. I think you want to make things happen, and you feel that it's important to make an impact. But at the same time, you shouldn't feel that things are going to move super fast. I mean, you might like them to move super fast, but at some level you perhaps have to accept that things are starting to slow down. Now, that might be something seasonal. I mean, I suppose it's a run up to Christmas, and you might be suddenly aware that, hold on, things are not actually moving as fast as you like them to. People are slower. People are not coming up with the results as quickly as they used to. And, that might make you feel slightly impatient, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. You have to just accept things the way they are, and just take the view that you can only do so much, and you can do quite a lot. The problems perhaps happen when, or the problems start happening when you have to deal with outside forces, when you're trying to make things move your way and they're not moving your way. So, Scorpio, I think that you perhaps need to try quite hard to be independent, and to also to be self-reliant. So you don't rely on other people's actions, other people honouring their promises. It should all be down to you, and I think that you'll be very good at setting the scene in terms of how you want it. If other people want to show up on this scene, that's great. If they don't want to show up, well, that's up to them. And so do things your way, and also make yourself available. Be available, because at the moment your communication skills seem to be quite good. You're quite good at just talking, making connections, and in a conversation you're able to steer the conversation in the right direction, perhaps talking about what someone else is interested in. And when you talk to someone about what they're interested in, well they'll naturally warm to you, won't they? So you can keep things ticking on a social level. I mean, I don't think that you're going to be in the mood for sort of serious conversation, but when you are in conversation, I think that you will be fairly effective, and you'll be able to talk about things in such a way that people will regard you as someone who does show an interest. Now, there is a danger, Scorpio, nonetheless, that you do take things too far. I have suggested that you shouldn't, but if you take things too far, if you are too pushy, and I think you could be, and perhaps because you may to some extent overestimate your power, because if you're too pushy, that might get a negative reaction. And the reason for that is because of that opposition between Venus and Mars, that opposition between Venus and Mars that is getting stronger. Venus in Aquarius, opposition Mars in Leo. Of course, Mars is representative of you. It represents you as someone who is, in a way, quite impatient. And people pick up on that impatience, and they pick up perhaps on your nervousness. And if you're not careful, you might put people off. People don't want to be pushed. And you have to also accept that some of the people in your life are independent-minded, and they have a clear idea about what they want to do. And they've perhaps got plans. And if you try to tell them to do something, or if you try to get them to change their plans, they won't take it well at all. And so that is a good reason, Scorpio, to be self-reliant, not to call on other people's help. It's not necessary. And if you do try to get people's cooperation, you might get a negative response, and that would just not make things easy at all, would it? And so that's, I think, is a broad picture. As far as close relationships are concerned, it's back to that Venus opposition Mars. Venus opposition Mars is starting to highlight the differences between you and another person, and that other person could be very close to you, but differences are coming to light now. And you knew about these differences. It's not as if we're dealing with something unknown, but whatever differences you and another person have, they're getting stronger. They're becoming more intense. And you perhaps need to steer clear of them, or you just need to accept them. But it may be best that you do things on your own, and try to perhaps think of yourself as a little bit of a hermit. I mean, a hermit who is very active, a hermit who is at the centre of things, but also a hermit who doesn't get in people's way. And you don't want to get in people's way with Venus opposition Mars. Maybe hermit was the wrong way, but you don't want to interfere with people's lives too much, because the response might be quite negative. Sagittarius, things look pretty good at the moment, I would have said. We've got Moon moving through Aries, and we've got the Sun moving through Sagittarius, your sign, and so we've got Moon trine Sun. Moon in Aries, trine Sun in Sagittarius, and that indicates that everything is moving nicely, and that if you want something to happen, it can happen. And so there's no need to feel that anything is tense or stressful. The universe wants you to be successful. It wants you to make things move, and things will move for you just quite naturally. And you don't have to think about it too much. Thinking is not necessarily going to be helpful. It's all about being spontaneous, and spontaneity is a word that one often associates with Sagittarius. And I think at the moment you are a lot more spontaneous than usual, and you can relax in your spontaneity, and you don't have to worry about society. I suppose society exists, regardless of what Margaret Thatcher said. Margaret Thatcher said there's no such thing as society. That's an interesting thing to say, isn't it? I mean, I suppose she was a Libra, Margaret Thatcher, and I suppose she understood perhaps what the nature of all the relationships around her was, and how in terms including her the sort of political nature of everything around her. And so perhaps she said something to be deliberately controversial, but maybe today there is no such thing as society for you. Because if you start to think about society, and I mean we should think about society, of course there is such a thing as society, but sometimes it's not helpful to get too obsessed about society. Society represents something which is a denial of one's individuality. We need to be ourselves. We need to be selfish. We need to look after our own interests, and that's the only way in which we can tune into our power. And so today, forget about society, forget about social norms. Do what you want, provided, of course, that it's not criminal or is going to completely destroy your reputation. But in fact, doing what you want without reference to social norms can, strange as it might sound, be what everyone wants, because people enjoy individuality, particularly now, and people appreciate people who are being individuals. So do what you feel is right, and do what you enjoy. If you in a way, from a moral perspective, what is the highest moral priority today? And at the moment, the highest moral priority for you, Sagittarius, is for you to enjoy yourself. That's what the universe wants. In fact, maybe that's what society wants. And it's certainly not a day for fitting in. And remember, it is the Sagittarian season, so you've got to make the most of it. The sun will not be in Sagittarius forever. In 11 days' time, it will be out of Sagittarius, and it will be in Capricorn. And I think that your approach is going to be exciting, and I think many people will, as I've kind of suggested, will appreciate it. And it may be that in terms of relationships, you can attract new people because you come over as being exciting and someone who is slightly different, someone who's just not doing things by the rule book. And yeah, that makes you interesting, and new connections can be formed. And when I'm talking about relationships, it could be anything. I mean, it could be romance, it could be just a friendship, it could be just someone who you meet, who you have just a commonality of interests. It depends. But other people are going to like you, and you are not going to have to compromise anything. It's not about compromising. It's just kind of saying, this is who you are, take it or leave it. And yeah, many people are going to be very impressed, and that's what people want. And also, I should point out that the sun in Sagittarius is making a trine to Chiron, and that kind of emphasizes it all the more. And in fact, the moon is making a conjunction to Chiron, and Chiron is the maverick. That Chiron wants to do things differently, just more evidence that it's time to do things differently, to be inventive. And in the process, you may have a chance to make things better, not just for yourself, but maybe for others as well. And you perhaps are showing the world a different way of being, a way of being that is perhaps more healthy than the old ways of being. So Sagittarius, you have a responsibility today, and you have a responsibility to enjoy yourself, have fun, and be creative, and also to be unapologetic. Capricorn, it's probably a day when you just feel that it's not necessary to really do anything. And in a way, therefore, it's a bit of a continuation of yesterday. I think that, yesterday was a day when there wasn't a great deal happening, and I think it's kind of more of the same. And you have to think, Capricorn, where are you going to be happiest? And I think just at the moment, Capricorn, you're going to be happiest in places where you're comfortable, like your own home, or somewhere where you feel that you are in control. And I don't think it's a time when you really want to take risks or draw attention to yourself, and that's the way it is. And I don't actually mean that in a negative sense. I think that you do have a lot of freedom, and I think I said yesterday that I think you have a lot of free will. I think you continue to have a lot of free will, and I think that you benefit from a trine between the moon and the sun. Yeah, sun-moon trines are always good, and this trine between the sun and moon is in sections of your horoscope which are quite introspective, quite down to earth, maybe even a little bit secretive. And so that's really going to encourage you not to draw attention to yourself. And I think that if you do spend time at home, I think you're going to feel that you're in the right place, and I think that you'll appreciate the company of your family, if there's family around, or even just being in contact with your family. That's something you could do. And I suppose in a constructive sense, if you feel that there's anything that is unsettled, unresolved, that's perhaps been sort of hanging over you for a couple of weeks, now would be a good time to resolve it. And because it's all about stability and finding stability and creating stability. And that is certainly something you can do. And I don't think you're going to be bothered by it. I think you'll take a very sort of matter-of-fact approach. Okay, something's not right. Could be better. Let's sort it out now. Let's not wait for it to go wrong. That's always a typical Capricorn approach. Capricorns often do like to know what can go wrong, and if something is pointed out to them that something can go wrong, they'll want to sort it out. They're very sort of matter-of-fact about it. And at the same time, you're fairly pleasant as a person at the moment. I mean, I know you're always a pleasant person, but I think that you do have the ability to make people feel good. I mean, I know that it's a day then when you're probably not really inclined towards too much social interaction, but if you do come across people, or you're on the phone with them, there's something about you that's reassuring, and yeah, you can make people feel good about themselves without too much effort, without having to try. I mean, I know that you might sometimes in the past have sort of focused on the negative because you think it's important to be realistic. Yeah, you can still be realistic, but there's something about you that is sort of reassuring as well. And so that, to my mind, makes you very solid at the moment. Yeah, you are reliable, and part of the reason you're reliable is because you feel comfortable. At least you should be feeling comfortable. You have everything you need to feel comfortable today. So don't feel tempted to move out of your comfort zone, to go anywhere you don't want to go, meet people you don't want to meet. It's all got to be on your terms, and that's fine. And you're not even being selfish about it, because you know how to make people happy, comfortable. But it's not happy as in hysterical happy. It's just happy as in comfortable, and you know how to reassure people. That I think at the moment today, that is something that you are very, very good at. And also, the moon does make a sextile to Jupiter, and so with the moon sextile Jupiter, you're going to be good at addressing things that are chaotic. And I suppose this goes back to what I was saying about if something is wrong, you'll know how to fix it. And likewise with moon sextile Jupiter, you can just actually do practical things which make you more secure. And so that's pretty much what today is about. It should be really a very simple, straightforward day. I suppose a note for the near future: Mercury is Mercury's still going retrograde. Mercury's going retrograde for a bit of time, but in the near future, I suppose Mercury is going to go stationary direct, and Mercury going stationary direct, that happens over the weekend. And so, when Mercury goes stationary direct, it may be a time, Capricorn, where you've got something that you haven't wanted to talk about, haven't wanted to discuss. You felt it's best to keep it secret. And with Mercury going stationary direct over the weekend, it might be a time when you need to start being open about it. And maybe you should prepare for that. What is it that you have been keeping to yourself that you now want to be open about? You feel it's nearly time, and perhaps you need to sort of prepare it, because there's a way to be open. You don't want to just reveal everything at once. You're a Capricorn. You want to do it in a way that is quite subtle and is quite appropriate. So that might be something you want to think about today, and perhaps for the rest of the week. But you don't have to. I just thought I would point that out. Aquarius. Aquarius, you are in quite a gregarious mood. You, I think, enjoy other people's company, and you want to see what is available and what opportunities are there for you. You know, as far as you're concerned at the moment, there are many opportunities. You may be a bit vague about it, but you know there are opportunities out there. I mean, not necessarily opportunities to enrich yourself, but more opportunities to find out what's going on. And part of it is the fact that we have got the moon. The moon is trine the sun, and so with the moon trine sun, you have, I think, just a natural capacity to talk, to say what's on your mind, and also really to talk about anything. You don't have to say what's on your mind. I think you'll be relatively good at small talk. I know that small talk is not something that most Aquarians are particularly into. It just seems a little too trivial for you. But if you need to small talk, I think you can. And I think that people who know you are going to really quite enjoy your company. And so at the same time, you have a certain curiosity at the moment. I mean, Aquarians can always be curious. And so by being with people, listening to gossip, I suppose. Okay, one doesn't want to take that too far, because gossip can so easily become small talk, can't it? It's something a little trivial about gossip, but there are little bits of information you can pick up on, which might be quite important. And don't be afraid of talking to people who you don't normally talk to, because right now other people seem to be in the mood, and people are going to be more friendly than usual. And so if you've been holding off on getting in touch with someone, perhaps you've never talked to them before, but if you want to sort of break the ice, things might work quite well. Things will just develop at sort of in a nice way, and perhaps you'll be able to make a new friend, or at least a new acquaintance. At the same time, you're going to be quite positive about things. At least you're going to give the impression of being quite positive. I mean, even if you have your own doubts, Aquarius, I think that you do have a positivity about you, which I think will be appreciated. And it's also because you'll be good at coming up with ideas. You'll have ideas. You'll be able to see things in different ways. And I think that is going to be very much appreciated. Now, as far as close relationships are concerned, I think I'm optimistic about this. Again, it goes back to the fact that the moon is trine the sun. So moon trine sun is often good for Aquarians' relationships, because the sun is ruler of Leo, which is your opposite sign. So with moon trine sun, you just feel that there is a natural rapport, and you don't have to try too hard. So you and the important people in your life, there's just a natural flow there, which just makes things easy. So overall today, I think it's pretty straightforward, and I don't think that you're going to be running into any significant obstacles. Pisces. Yesterday I mentioned the fact that there are planets moving into Aries, that there is a possibility that financial issues could be important, and that might not necessarily be the case, but I kind of have to point this out just in case. And if money is important, then I think that there are things you can do to make things work. And So perhaps there is something of a financial nature that has recently been a bit blocked. That's possible. And now might be a great chance to unblock it because of a trine between the moon in Aries and the sun in Sagittarius. So if there's something bothering you about money, or someone owes you money, or you feel you want more money, now is perhaps the time to do it. And if you leave it too late, I suppose you get too close to Christmas. People are distracted. But while you've got sort of things are sort of basically normal, and I suppose in terms of organisations, office hours are as normal. You haven't got things closing for the holiday or whatever. Now might be the time to push your financial interests, and perhaps you want to even push your luck financially. You never know. I think if there's any time to gain by pushing your luck financially, it might be now. Aside from money, this moon trine sun could have relevance to your career if that's appropriate, and your business, and whatever you're doing to earn money. If you are earning money, it depends. But I think that moon trine sun makes you come over as being sort of very, very competent and very with it. And that I think will be appreciated because, at the moment, we've got no planets in Earth signs, unless you count Uranus. Uranus is in Taurus, but no planets in Earth signs. So people are a bit confused about money matters and practicality. And so what people are looking for is reassurance, and they want people to seem competent. They want someone to come over as being competent, someone who's going to sort things out, someone who knows the details, who knows the financial details, who perhaps knows the tax code, knows what's possible and what's not possible financially. Anyone can fit that role. I mean, anyone can give the impression of knowing what they're doing, but maybe, Pisces, you actually do know what you're doing. I mean, even if you don't, you're able to give the impression of being competent. And so if you can give that impression of being competent, maybe you can work out the details later. I think that will be very much appreciated. And so perhaps in terms of work or business, it might be a time to just bluff it, just to claim that you know what you're doing, and to claim that you understand how things are working. But maybe you do understand how things are working, and you feel it. And so by giving the impression that you're able to take control, that you understand the details that matter, people are going to be prepared to trust you. And in general, people are going to be prepared to trust you today. And you're someone who does seem to know what they're doing. Of course, it could just be Pisces playing its tricks. So I suppose if you are a Pisces who is, I don't know, say for example you're a serial liar and a con artist. Well, I'm sure you're not, but if you happen to be, then I'm afraid you might have quite a good day. I think because you are going to come over as being someone who knows what they're doing. But I would perhaps urge you not to consciously mislead people, because that's not very moral, is it? But I'm talking about a small minority of Pisceans, and I'm sure you do know what you're doing. So it is a time, Pisces, when I think that you can really have an impact. And I think in most cases, people are going to be prepared to trust you. And that's not just about work and career. I think in general, people are going to be prepared to trust you. And maybe that's what people need, because some people are just feeling very insecure. And I think that you're someone that can sort of smooth things over and create a sense of certainty. And I think right now is what people need. And now I want to look at today from the viewpoint of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what will Tuesday be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram 29, which is the abysmal. Now, that sounds bad, but it's not quite as bad as it looks. And with this hexagram, we got 4 moving lines. So regardless of what the hexagram actually is, the fact that we have 4 moving lines indicates that there is a lot of movement here. So I think it will be quite an active day. I know that astrologically there wasn't much action. I mean, there weren't too many geocentric aspects, and the main geocentric aspects all involve the moon. But I do think today there's going to be quite a lot of action, quite a lot of ebb and flow, and that perhaps is reflected by this hexagram. So we have to sort of follow through the movement, because the bottom line moves, the second line moves, the fourth line moves, and the fifth line moves. And so with the bottom line, there is some danger that we get too attached to the wrong environment. There may be something about the environment we're in which is basically no good. And I mean, the I Ching can be quite dramatic about it, and it's saying that we are comfortable with evil. We've got used to having evil around us. We've got so used to having evil around us that we don't bother about it anymore. And perhaps we need to just wake up here. There's something about our environment which is no good, and we've just got too used to it. And something needs to change, because, of course, we're dealing with the abysmal, the abyss. There is always a danger that we fall into the abyss, and that is not something, obviously, that we want to do. And so I think it does matter that we wake up. And once we've woken up, we need to start to take control of the situation, because it is dangerous. The abysmal is about that danger of falling into pits. The abyss that has no bottom. By definition, I suppose that is the abyss, isn't it? And we shouldn't have too many expectations. It's enough, in a way, to just get ourselves out of trouble. Take things slowly, move things towards safety, and it's going to take time, and we are going to be able to make some progress. And again, it's kind of like having to tread carefully, because there's always that danger of falling into a pit. I mean, that's always the danger. And then the fifth line moves. And the fifth line is kind of interesting, because the fifth line, the imagery of the fifth line at least, is of being in a pit. We're in a pit, and we are being buried alive. And so you can imagine this earth coming down upon us, and the situation is looking bad. But then the I Ching says that whoever is trying to bury us alive runs out of earth. So we're saved, because there's a limit to how far, I don't know, the forces of evil can go. They just run out. They run out of capacity to harm us. And because of that, we're able to get out. So if you feel that things are getting bad for whatever reason, it's just one thing after another, the universe maybe has got it in for you, in the end, it will just run out. It will just there's nothing more to throw at you. I don't know, it kind of reminds me of that Shakespeare play Titus Andronicus. I won't go into the detail, but the hero, or the anti-hero, Titus Andronicus, these absolute disasters, one disaster, one tragedy, horrors, mutilations, everything comes down on his head, and it becomes over the top in the end. And nothing more can be thrown at him, and I think in the end he cuts off he's tricked into cutting off his own arm in a futile attempt to save his son from getting executed. It's just really bad, and so nothing more can be thrown at him. And after that, the play turns, and he's able to kind of eke out some kind of advantage for himself and get revenge. I mean, that's how it works for him. Of course, in the end, he gets killed, but it doesn't matter. It's so that's perhaps the image of this. I mean, Titus Andronicus was perhaps a bit of a hyperbolic example, but there is a limit to what the universe can throw at you today, and so when you've hit that limit, you're going to be able to start to recover. And then with this hexagram 29, the abysmal, we move to, because we've actually got 4 moving lines. Then the hexagram it moves to is hexagram 51, which is thunderbolts. Again, this is a hexagram that seems difficult, and there is this sense of shock today, and I think the previous hexagram is really showing this. And so with thunderbolts, there is a sense of shock. So we get out of a pit having been almost buried alive. There's more shock, but this is a kind of shock that we perhaps overreact to it. We think it's a complete disaster. We think the things are going to get worse because we're so used to it. We just think it's going to get bad. But when we actually look at it, it's not. It's nothing. I'm not saying it's nothing, but it's not going to completely overthrow everything. The I Ching talks about having incense. And despite the thunderbolts, despite everything going on, we're able to keep the spoon steady, the spoon holding the incense. So don't panic if things just seem to be on the brink, because actually it's a situation we're going to be able to handle. It will be okay. So don't overreact. And thunderbolts is a passing tension. I Ching actually talks about first panic and then laughter, and I think that is the laughter of relief. And now I want to look at the Middle East, which is just a ridiculous task, really. The Middle East is just so complicated, and I'm not convinced that I necessarily know what I'm talking about, but I will try to look at some sort of relevant charts. So what happened in Syria in terms of the Middle East? I've listened to people talk about this, and one view of what's happened is that you look at winners and losers. Clearly Russia is a loser, because Russia was, of course, a supporter of the Assad regime, and Iran is a loser. I'm not going to look at Russia, but I'm certainly going to look at Iran. So Iran is a loser. Iran was another supporter of the Assad regime, and it's lost a major ally, and it's lost a way in which it can support Hezbollah in Lebanon. And then you've got the winners. Okay, you could say Turkey is a winner, perhaps, but the big winner is Israel. And you might say that this is a complete disaster for Palestine and Gaza. This is the end in a way. Israel has managed to destroy its old enemy, Syria, and Syria has been an enemy of Israel pretty much since the beginning of Israel, and so it's managed to destroy its enemy, and it's weakened Iran, and I think that the Palestinians in Gaza are going to they are big losers. Maybe they're one of the biggest losers, and I think perhaps this relates back to the attack on October the 7th, 2023. So I just wanted to quickly look at this chart, which in a way this is the beginning. And you could say that as a result of this attack, Iran got drawn in, Hezbollah got drawn in a way Syria got drawn in, and they all felt they would do what they can to take advantage of a situation and to destabilize Israel, and the whole thing backfired with the fall of Syria. So you could say that, at least with the fall of the Assad regime. And so, in a way, the Palestinians started it. I know it's a lot more complicated than this, but this is one aspect of it. As I said, it is the Middle East, and I don't know much about the Middle East. I've never been to the Middle East. The only Arab country I've visited is Morocco, it's not something I know much about. But what was interesting about the attack on Israel, I always had the view that this was in the end not going to work out. I know a lot of people were very supportive of the Palestinians. Sort of outside the mainstream media, thinking that the Palestinians were in the end going to triumph, that things looked really bad for Israel. I was never convinced, and I think the Israel attack. This is a chart when Gaza. This is a horoscope for when Hamas attacked Israel. Yes, Hamas attacked Israel. It happened, and they committed appalling atrocities. And this is the chart, and the moon is in Cancer, making a square to Mars, and kind of that was how it was going to end up. And so Mars was in Libra, and in spite of the moon looking good in Cancer on a midheaven, that's perhaps a fortunate time to launch for Hamas to have launched that attack in Cancer, at least superficially, perhaps moon making the sextile to Uranus. But how did it all end up? It ended up with the moon making the square to South Node and the square to Mars. And also, of course, the moon making an opposition to Pluto. In the end, it was a very destructive action, which didn't just contribute to the destruction of Gaza and to tens of thousands of people in Gaza dying, but it also led to a wider conflict in the Middle East, which, in a sense, Israel won. And it's kind of strange that Israel and Turkey are seen as the winners. Yet Turkey has just Turkey broke off diplomatic relations with Israel. So although Israel and Turkey are at loggerheads, they're both the winners of this. And of course, in the run-up to the fall of Damascus and the invasion of Syria by this group HTS? I can't remember what that stands for. The jihadis. In the run-up to that, Israel was degrading Syria's defenses, and so Israel played a role to it. And so I think you have to say that this was the beginning, that the attack on October the 7th, which brings us on to the attack itself. Not the attack itself, when the jihadis launched their defense of aggression. I think it was deterrence of aggression, and this took place on November the 27th, 2024. That's when it started. So the attack started then, and so the question is, was this a good time to launch an attack? My first feeling was, well, maybe not. I don't know precisely when, but because Mercury was retrograde, and Mars was direct, but Mars was stationary retrograde, was about to go retrograde, and also it was a waning moon. So you could say that didn't look good, but I think that there was an aspect which I did mention at the time, but I didn't relate it to the Middle East, and it is the fact that the Sun is trine Mars. In fact, there was a Sun trine Mars on where's it gone? There was Sun trine Mars. Okay, I've relocated this to Damascus. So I think that's London time. I think the Sun trine Mars was at 11:06 a.m. on November the 27th. So this is the chart for when the jihadis attacked. First attack, November the 27th, 2024. And you can see that this is the chart for the actual Sun trine Mars aspect. And so it was so exact, but maybe the Sun trine Mars was enough to ensure the success of the operation. So perhaps because of that Sun trine Mars, that is why the operation was so successful. And in fact, there was a grand trine. There's Sun and Mars in trine, and that's trine the North Node. So you've got North Node, trine the Sun, trine Mars. So this was really running together really well. And so that was when they started the attack. And so perhaps that is why it was so successful. And then we have the conclusion of the attack. I don't know when Damascus fell, but here is the chart for at least for the day on which Damascus fell, the fall of. Again, I don't know exactly what time. I just went for noon on December the 8th. So this is the rebel victory when they start to take control of the country, I suppose. Does it work like that? Probably not. It's not like one government taking over from another government, like Keir Starmer taking over from Rishi Sunak. It's more complicated than that because there are all sorts of parties in Syria, but this may be astrologically an important moment in Syria's journey. And Mercury's retrograde, combust, Mars is in Leo, retrograde. That doesn't strike me as being great. I don't know where the moon is. I mean, at noon it's in Pisces, but we have got this. Perhaps the moon is applying to a square of the sun. You've got moon conjunct Saturn. Moon is square. Moon is perhaps square sun. The moon is bringing the sun and Saturn together again. So you can see that this is not a particularly fortunate time for a new beginning in Syria. And this takes me back to what I was saying right at the beginning of this video. Do you need astrology? I mean, it's one of those things where you can make a prediction without even looking at the planets that Syria is going to go from bad to worse. That's going to happen. I don't need astrology because that's the way it always happens, isn't it? You're not going to get stability in Syria. It's just going to make things worse. And I don't know why people in the West are so happy about Syria falling. Okay, they like it from a geopolitical point of view. They might be happy that it's a big embarrassment for Russia and for Iran, but in terms of the lives of ordinary Syrians, it's going to just make things worse. It might seem unbelievable, but it will, and there's also the possibility that it might bring a renewed immigration crisis. So that seems to have been forgotten for the moment. But those are some of the charts about this incursion. And so in terms of winners and losers, well, one does think about Israel. I mean, in a way, this is a huge victory for Israel. And so here's Israel's chart. And so notice that Israel has its moon at 4 Leo, and so Mars is trine its moon at the moment. So let's just compare. Let's compare Israel's chart with the fall of Damascus to see what. to see if there it is. Okay, to see what was happening. So when Damascus fell, Mars was at 6 degrees 9 Leo. So Mars was fairly close to the trine of the Sun. And you could say Mars was clearly fairly close to the conjunction with the Moon, and the Sun was at 16 Sagittarius. The Sun was making a trine to Israel's Saturn. So there are a few things in the chart which were suggesting that things might be moving in a way that is favourable to Israel's interests. And also Uranus, this has been going on for a long, long time. It's just more of this Uranus opposition the Sun that Israel is currently experiencing. This has been a huge shake-up for Israel. But I'm not saying there's anything dramatic going on here, but I think that Mars close to Israel's moon, and don't forget Mars will now be going retrograde, and so over the next, next few weeks or week or so, I don't know how. I suppose Mars is speeding up. So when will Mars? Yeah, in about when does it happen? 421. About just before Christmas, around the 23rd, just after the solstice, Mars will be conjunct Israel's moon, so it'll be interesting to see what happens then. But for the moment, it does seem like a victory for Israel, and of course it's a victory for Benjamin Netanyahu. So here is Benjamin Netanyahu's chart. We don't know his precise time of birth, but he seems to have been born late morning. So Benjamin Netanyahu has his south node, north node at 16 Aries, and so we could say that Jupiter is potentially helping him out here. So there's his north node. There's the Sun and Jupiter. So the Sun is sextile his south node. Now, it might be sextile his midheaven. We don't know. I've just gone for 1145 as his time. But we don't really know when Benjamin Netanyahu was exactly when he was born. Astrologers have come up with possible times, but it seems that that Sun-Jupiter opposition is affecting his nodal axis, and so that perhaps is quite useful for him. And on the other side, someone who really has been damaged by this totally is Bashar Assad. So Bashar Assad, again, don't have a time of birth for Bashar Assad, but in terms of the fall of Damascus, Bashar Assad is a Virgo. He kind of looks like a Virgo. He never wanted to be president. I think he just wanted to be an eye doctor. That's all he wanted. He went to medical school. His specialization was eyes, and that's what he wanted to do. I think he just wanted to be in London with his wife, have his family, just be an eye doctor. And then his brother got killed in a car crash, and because his brother got killed in a car crash, he had to come back to Syria, and he became the heir apparent to his father. So you could say he didn't really want to be a president originally, but of course once you're president of Syria, I suppose it's difficult to get out of it. And his Saturn so he's got there's his Sun at 18 Virgo. He's got born in the mid-60s, 1965, so he's got a Saturn-Uranus opposition. And so you can see that Saturn, it's his Saturn return. His Saturn was at 13.9 at the time of the fall of Damascus. His Saturn is at 13.28 Pisces. So, yeah, Saturn return. He's now, I think he's safe. He's in Moscow, but he's having to deal with his Saturn return. And look at the moon here. So I don't know precisely when Damascus fell, but there was a sort of Moon-Saturn conjunction at the time of the fall of Damascus. I don't know how exact. And likewise, Assad had a Moon-Saturn conjunction of some form. So he seems to have been quite sensitive to the Moon-Saturn cycle. So he has Moon and Saturn in Pisces, and Damascus fell, and he had to flee the country when there was the Moon and Saturn were in Pisces in the sky. There is then the question of another loser. I mean, in terms of countries, states, whatever. Palestine. It is a huge loss for Palestine. They're going to be sidelined now. Israel has won, and I think that in terms of Gaza, we can say that Israel has won. I'm not just saying that from an astrological point of view. It is the consensus. This is a really big victory for Israel. Longer term might not be so easy because when you're dealing with the Middle East, it's always that law of unintended consequences. America and Israel may be very happy with what's going on in Syria at the moment, but things can change, and I think that probably things will change pretty quickly. But there is the chart of Palestine. So if we take the Palestine chart for Palestine, if it's born on November the 15th, 1988. At 12:40 a.m. in Algiers, except for Algiers, not for anywhere in Israel or Palestine. But if you set it for Algiers, when the declaration was made, you can see that the midheaven is at sort of 24:42 Taurus, and so at the time of the actual attack on November the 27th, when the jihadis went into Syria, Uranus was at 24:49 Taurus. So Uranus was right on Sagittarius, on Palestine's midheaven, exact. And then with the fall of Damascus, it wasn't quite so exact, but still they have Uranus on the midheaven, and Saturn is at 13. Saturn was at 13 Pisces, so Saturn at 13 Pisces was conjunct Palestine's north node, and so Saturn on its north node is probably not great. The north node is kind of where Palestine is trying to go to. Perhaps also its connections with in the region, perhaps, and Saturn has come along and really cut it off. So I think that is potentially quite difficult for Palestine. I mean, I suppose you could say that Saturn is trine Mercury, but do you necessarily see that trine as being a good thing? I think you could just see it as an aspect. And Palestine does have Mercury-Pluto conjunction, and I think the talent of Palestine about Mercury-Pluto conjunction is the fact that they are very good at communicating. They're very good at creating a message which is targeted to hit certain groups in the West. And I think we've sort of seen that with the demonstrations in favour of Palestine all over the world. There are lots and lots of people, lots of places where very appalling human rights are committed across the world. But why do we focus on Palestine? I mean, there are all sorts of reasons why, but I can think of. But one reason may just be that the Palestinians are very good at promoting their cause, and other places where you have disasters which are just as bad, even probably often much worse, like Darfur or other places. People don't really notice this because the Palestinians are good at getting attention, and that may be the Mercury-Pluto conjunction. So then there is a question of how you see transiting Saturn trine Mercury-Pluto, that Mercury-Pluto in Palestine's chart. Now, you could say that it's a trine, it's a good aspect. Saturn, they're going to be able to sort of get it together. On the other hand, it just may be Saturn. And I think with Saturn trines, we need to be wary of it. Remember with Kamala Harris, how she had, what was it, her progressed sun was sextile Saturn And some astrologers were very excited about that because they, at the time of her election loss, and they were very excited about that because it's a sextile, it's a nice aspect. Maybe it's just an aspect. She had Saturn aspecting her sun aspecting Saturn, not good. So that's another way of looking at it. So those are a few thoughts on Palestine. And then I just wanted to finish by looking at Iran. And with Iran, this is clearly a major, major disaster for Iran. Certainly more of a disaster for Iran than it is Russia. And here is Iran's chart, the Islamic Republic, April the 1st, 1979 at 3 p.m. And so in terms of transits, it's not the transits. I mean, the main transit that I can see is in terms of the fall of Damascus was Neptune. So Neptune was conjunct. So Neptune was at 27.8 Pisces, and it was conjunct Mercury at 27.16 Pisces. So Mercury is about, I suppose, how the country thinks about itself. It can also be about news. And so this is a time when the country is, at the very least, feeling completely confused. The leadership doesn't really know what to do, and it has clearly been a tough time for Iran. And I suppose the sun is moving towards a conjunction of Iran's Neptune. So, that's not great. And I suppose but Saturn is kind of moving towards Iran's south node. So, it is a somewhat problematic time for the country, but it's the solar arc directions which are perhaps more interesting. So I just wanted to look at the solar arc directions for Iran at the time of the fall of Damascus, and assuming the Islamic Republic of Iran was formed at 3 p.m. on April the 1st, 1979, then solar arc directed Mars is exactly on Iran's midheaven. And so you can see that this is a time this is something that is really very, very difficult for the country. But it also kind of encourages the country to look for ways around the problem. It is about aggression, and it's about defeat, but it's also a question of what is the country going to do now. And I'm interested by this sun, by the progressed sun. So Iran's progressed sun is at 25 degrees 38 Taurus. So that means that the progressed sun is moving towards Algol. And also that progressed sun is going to be activated by Uranus next year. So Uranus is going to be on the progressed sun. And so what does that mean, that progressed sun? Now, you could see that as just being bad news for for Iran. Progressed sun moving onto Algol, just the country just maybe falling apart or doing things it shouldn't do, and so forth. That is one way of looking at it. But we shouldn't forget that Algol does have a sort of special connection with nuclear weapons and nuclear. The first nuclear explosion in Alamogordo, I believe, had it was nuclear weapon. That was in July 1945. That had I believe that had Mars conjunct Algol, and so when you have Algol links, you should really be thinking, there's Iran's sun on Algol, so that might relate to the need to acquire nuclear weapons. And I think I've heard it said over the last 24 hours that with this defeat in in Syria, Iran is going to want to acquire nuclear weapons quickly. And it's about, at the very least, it's about saving face. And also having nuclear weapons is potentially a way of protecting yourself. It is a deterrence. I mean, the example of North Korea is perhaps an example of what happens when you have nuclear weapons. People kind of treat you with a bit more respect when you have nuclear weapons. So there is a view that Iran is going to try its hardest to acquire nuclear weapons, and that there could be a nuclear test perhaps sooner rather than later. So I did try to ask this question. I did try to ask a Hori about whether Iran will have a nuclear test between now and the end of 2025. That was my question. Now, this is an example of a chart that is not radical. Unfortunately, I can't answer the question. And the problem with this chart is that when I ask the question, the ascendant, in fact, this is set for Lakewood, Washington. I don't think I've got the coordinates exactly right, but the ascendant is too late. And so when at least when I do my horrors, if I have an ascendant between 27 of the sign and 3 of the sign, I discard it. It means nothing. I can't say anything about it. So there's nothing to say. So I just wanted to show you that I have tried to ask the question about whether or not Iran is going to have a nuclear test, a successful nuclear. I sort of changed the question. I had to put in the successful about 8 minutes after I asked. About at 6:19, so I don't know, about around 6:19, I asked another question: will it be a successful nuclear test? But I didn't get an answer because the ascendant was too late, and that is a stricture against judgment. Now, with Iran's progressed sun moving towards Algol, that might be a hint that this is now what Iran is going to be moving towards. And so perhaps over the next year, maybe earlier, Iran is going to feel that it's going to have to explode an atomic bomb simply as a matter of face. But I haven't really been able to look at great detail in that, except for the fact that, that progressed sun on Algol could be something quite significant. Anyway, that's enough of my ramblings about the Middle East. Sorry to be, as usual, a little bit chaotic about it, but I thought it'd be good to just look at a number of charts. I hope you found this video of some interest. If you did find it interesting, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. And if you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thanks again for watching, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.